I've got an urgent update, folks, and well, it's bad news for Americans in 2024 as 99% of us may be affected by what's coming. And even though the White House will continue to say that things are better off, that inflation's coming down along with the price of goods, that housing is affordable, and that the economy is booming due to robust spending, and pretty much any other spin that they can add to the narrative about what we're actually going through. The truth is that Americans, those who actually go out and buy groceries at Walmart, Target, and Costco, or actually any retailer at this point, they will tell you that they're feeling and they're seeing the complete opposite of what the White House is talking about.
The holiday sales scorecard, despite lingering effects of inflation, new numbers show Americans spent more this year, not only on holiday gifts, but on themselves. Morgan Norwood is here now. And Morgan, some encouraging signs for the economy. Good morning.
Hey, good morning to you, Whit. That's right. From winter wardrobes to fine dining, holiday shoppers really showed up this year, easing immediate fears of an economic slowdown. Overall, consumer spending grew by 3.1% compared to the same time last year. But what were we actually buying? Well, it wasn't the fancy pair of earrings or new TVs. Jewelry and electronic purchases actually shrunk. Instead, shoppers went big on clothing, food gathering around the table. Look, spending at restaurants jumped nearly 8%. Shoppers also preferred to add to cart versus push the cart, as online spending was up 6.3% compared to in-store shopping's 2.2%.
Now, you're probably thinking, Ron, I thought that this was bad news for us, but consumers spent more in the holidays for 2023 than 2022. And sure, I'm not going to come out here and say that they're lying to us, but I'm also not going to just kind of take these numbers at face value and just think that everything's okay now. You know what? I'm going to just go ahead and ask you guys. Do you guys think that we're just so much better now compared to a few years ago? Comment 1 if you guys feel as if the American consumer is so much stronger and that the economic plan from the federal government is actually working. And comment 2 if you feel as if the opposite of that is happening. So while you guys think about that, make sure to hit the like button for the video and subscribe to the channel. That way you'll stay informed on almost everything that you need to know about what's happening all around us. All right, guys, so getting back here. So the message that things are on the up and up is supported by another report that says that holiday shopping for 2023 was a huge hit. You know who's reporting it? MasterCard. Finally, a report that shows us the truth, huh? Sure it does. But it's actually showing that people don't necessarily have the money to spend on all of these different things. They most probably have lines of credit supporting this. It's an insane lifestyle, isn't it? Because it's kind of crazy to spend money you don't have, right? But still, that's what's happening as we saw credit card bills rising to $1 trillion in the second quarter of 2023. Because we're going to be seeing all these numbers. They're going to just keep telling us to spend, and that there's nothing wrong. But I mean, what's the APR on a new credit card today? I think it's almost 25%. Now, feel free to correct me in the comments if I'm wrong on that one, but that's pretty huge, right? And we have not even discussed just how many of these consumers are on these buy now, paid later services. You'd have to think that a lot of them use these too for the holidays.
This is the first time credit card debt has topped $1 trillion in America. That amount includes both revolving balances and balances paid off at the end of the billing cycle.
Consumers are increasingly reliant on credit cards to finance purchases of everyday goods and services, and that's because they're just getting a lot more expensive. At the same time, their wages are not increasing at the same pace as inflation, and that makes it more difficult because as the credit card balance increases, it can be more challenging for consumers to pay down that debt.
The excess savings that Americans lined their pockets with during the COVID-19 pandemic is largely now spent. High inflation and interest rates have made everything more expensive. Normal costs like groceries, gas, and housing are all rising. Add in the resumption of student loan repayments, and it's creating the perfect rising debt storm.
Americans are skipping out on some of their credit card payments because household budgets are squeezed due to higher borrowing costs.
But hey, maybe credit card debt will be forgiven as well. I mean, we've got a student debt strike with millions of them saying that they're not going to be paying another dime on their loans. In fact, only 60% of student loan borrowers made payments when it resumed in October.
Borrowers around the country know what October 1st means. Student loan repayments resume after a 3-year pause. More than 40 million borrowers owe student debt, now totaling more than $1.7 trillion in the U.S. Experts estimate borrowers will start repaying an average of about $350 a month. That's significant and could leave a huge dent in monthly budgets. A recent report from Credit Karma found that more than half of federal student loan borrowers say they'll have to choose between repayments and necessities, limiting consumer spending, which has been a pillar in keeping the economy chugging along. So could a hit to that spending trigger a recession?
I think that we'll see the first signs of this after the the student loan forgiveness program ends, this is going to be a consumer-led recession. I think will ultimately be more severe than people think into 2024.
Others see student loans as a small part of the economy. Student financial aid expert Mark Kantrowitz puts it at 0.4% of GDP. He thinks the return of repayments will have little impact.
It's a really tiny portion of the economy. It's not going to derail the economy.
But people might think twice about those big ticket items.
People have said that student loan payments have a domino effect, that they cause delays in people buying their first homes or their first cars or getting married. And that is true.
And while October 1st is seen as a hard deadline, its effects may be more gradual. The Biden administration is offering income-based repayment plans to those who might have had a tough time starting up payments again.
So here's what some critics are saying. These students, they took on these loans on their own. They weren't forced to do it, right? They also had, like 3 years in which they weren't paying a cent on them too, right? So at this point, you got to ask, what stopped them from maybe even getting a side hustle? Maybe earning a little extra money to put away once payments resumed? Or did they believe President Biden when he said that he was going to be forgiving student loans, even though he didn't have the power to do so? I really don't mean to offend any of these students, all right? I understand that times are tough, but there comes a point in which you got to be responsible for your actions. I mean, isn't that the way that the world works? Because let's take it from a different perspective, all right? If student loan debt should be forgiven, then how would that be for credit card debt? If that's the case, we should just stop paying our mortgages. We should stop paying for rent, stop paying car payments if you have one, you know what I mean? Just let everything be free. Give out Teslas or something like that, right? Or if you want to make it fair, give back all of the money of former students who actually paid off their debt. It's crazy to think that we're living in a time where accountability is no longer the norm. We're kicking the can down the road is seen more as an alternative rather than facing the problems head on. So the problem is an analyst from JP Morgan is saying that the road is nearing a dead end, and that road leads to mid-2024. So the prediction is that 99% of Americans will have less money in the bank at this time compared to the pre-pandemic times when inflation was really low. So yes, only the wealthiest top 1% will be enjoying 2024. Meanwhile, the rest of us will, we'll just be struggling financially. At least that's what they're saying from the numbers that they have. Are you guys seeing the same thing, or are things becoming much better on your end? Now, since we talked about JP Morgan and their less than stellar expectations of 2024, I think it would be pretty fair to talk about this next topic. Did you guys know that for 2023, global banks took out more than 60,000 jobs? This makes 2023 one of the heaviest years for layoffs in the industry since the financial crisis. And you can see right there, you got UBS, Wells Fargo, Citigroup, Morgan Stanley, Bank of America, all these big time players just cutting off people to protect their profit margins. To make matters worse, these numbers don't even include smaller banks or minor staff cuts, so the actual number is expected to be a lot higher. But what are some analysts seeing for 2024? Well, the bad news is that they're expecting a sequel of 2023 rather than a fresh start, meaning that layoffs will most probably be a trend for 2024. It's also not going to be confined to just banks either, all right? We're bound to see layoffs in many different sectors as more businesses lean toward AI, robotics, and automation. But what do you guys think? Is 2024 going to be even worse than 2023? Or is this the year that we just kind of pretty much turn it all around? Make sure you guys let me know down below. And before I go, I want to thank you guys so much for being here. Keep safe, and I'll see you on the next one.